Good morning and welcome back to Wayne's World of Pharmacy. Today I'd like to talk about an add-on in private practice pharmacies called the supply of medicine to ships or ship chandling. I was very fortunate in my career while I was in private practice to have been blessed with being able to supply large ocean-going vessels with medicine. It was pretty much by chance, but I would imagine that anybody who has a little bit of interest in their business could quite easily follow in my footsteps. I'm going to tell you exactly how this came about and what you would need if you stay near a big body of water where there's a port, either on the sea or in some of the bigger lakes across America and Central Africa. In fact, just about any port in the world, a person who has got a pharmacy license to sell medicine has the ability to conduct this kind of business. It really is a lucrative part of being able to grow your turnover. Firstly, when I was staying in a little town back in the 1990s called Rocks, I was fortunate enough to have a customer who I became quite good friends with, but I don't think it has to be done this way. You just have to knock on the door of one of the bigger businesses like Mediterranean Shipping Company or Maersk or any of those big container vessels. That's how I started. And so I set up an appointment, went and saw the CEO of Mediterranean Shipping Company in Durban. And the gentleman in question was very kind enough to let me supply one of their vessels, which was about a 4,500 40-foot container vessel called the MSC Clarinda. I threw myself in the deep end, and it was rather a huge learning curve because there's a few things that you need. Firstly, you need obviously permission from the company to enter the port. Each time you go there, they'll give you an authorized letter. But one of the other things that you require is an import-export license. So I started very small. I was running my own business at that time, and I had to obviously get a locum in and go and visit the vessel when she was in port in Durban. So the first thing that you've got to find out, obviously from the authorities within the company, is when the vessel is going to be berthed in the harbour, so that you can obviously get the order and supply the medicine. One of the other duties that was tasked to me was also to look after their hospital. You must remember each one of these ships has a hospital and a pharmacy, and sometimes it's a 2-bed hospital, especially on your larger vessels. These vessels don't have a medical doctor riding with them, as opposed to a cruise liner, which normally when the ship goes out to sea will have a medical doctor on board to see to all the passengers' needs, and basically sits in as your medical doctor while you're out at sea. Vitally important part of sea travel. The only thing to remember, as I've mentioned, is that you do need an import-export license because the ship is leaving South African waters. The MSC Clarinda back then used to do a round trip from Durban to Cape Town, around the Cape of Good Hope, and then sail off to New York. That whole round trip and coming back used to take approximately just a little bit less than 3 months. But as I got more and more into this, technology started catching up, and we had the days of internet faxes. So what would happen is the second mate, which was basically your senior paramedic on board the MSC Clorinda, would tally up the stocks that they had used, and he would send me a fax order approximately 2 weeks before the ship arrived back in Durban. Now, this has got to be played out in a very choreographed fashion, so as not to start incurring costs, which we call demurrage costs, where the ship has overstayed its welcome and it costs a fortune if you don't supply the medicine or the food or whatever you're supplying to the ship on timeously. So preparation is absolutely important. Certain of the medicines had to be signed off by a doctor, which I was fortunate enough to have on board with me. And so, for example, if you had any Schedule 5 and 6 medicines, those had to be totally legally obtained and signed off by the doctor. Other medicines were catered for through the license that the shipping company owned, and literally it is anything from a headache tablet through to nausea, diarrhea, the whole different barrage of medicines that we do have in our arsenal that I was supplying to the MSC Clorinda. And so once the vessel got off we call it the wild coast of South Africa, I would normally get a phone call from the company and say, listen, she's berthing at such and such a berth at this time, and I'd have all my medicines packed and prepared with all the necessary documentation, and I would then wait for the vessel to berth and immediately go on board with all the other chandlers, and of course the ships, the port authorities and members of the Mediterranean Shipping Company. I was diligent about the amount of time that I spent on the ship, making sure that all expiry dates, batches, quantities were suited to the needs of the vessel, and even some of them, the hospital items like bandages and gauze, etc., was also part of the inventory that I had to get together for them. I was doing a good job with this, and eventually it spilled over into MSC giving me a couple of normal cargo vessels also to supply. I won't go into exactly how much medicine it was, but it was a substantial figure. And once I'd been supplying the Clorinda which was the main vessel that I was supplying, for just over a year, I was fortunate enough for the company to approach me and ask me if I would supply, I think it was the MSC Symphony or Symphonia, one of those cruise vessels that works out of Durban and either goes from Durban to Cape Town or Durban to Maputo in Mozambique, or just out to sea on a trip to nowhere. And that became a huge part of my business, and took up a lot of time, obviously, because I was on board the vessel at least maybe once a week from November through to April, which is the good calm sea time for us to have cruise vessels going out to sea in a fairly safe environment where the seas are not exceptionally rough. So firstly, as I said, you've got to go and see their import-export company. Every drug has to be registered exactly the way they want it, with lot numbers and expiry dates and quantity and price, and that has to be done in duplicate. In fact, it was done in triplicate, because a copy would be given to the vessel, a copy would be given to the import-export company that handled the duty side of it for me, and then also I would keep a copy for myself. It's not that impossible to get involved with this kind of thing. You've just got to go and knock on the company's door and put your best foot forward and build a relationship with the person who has the ability to actually give you that contract. Like I said, with me, I started with one vessel. Eventually I was doing about 4 or 5 different vessels. The Clorinda, obviously, just under every 3 months would return, and it's almost like taking stock in your own pharmacy and refilling it. What I have found out recently, though, is that a lot of the medicines that are supplied to the cruise liners does in fact come straight from Italy. I'm not too sure whether that's still the case, but there was still enough stock that they required for me to have to top up their levels on a weekly basis while the ship was cruising around the South African coast. I think in a nutshell, that's basically it, but it's going to take a lot of effort from you, especially being out of your pharmacy. You're going to need a dedicated locum. You're going to need someone who helps you so that you can manage it, because it has to be done by a pharmacist. You can't just send anybody on board. And you need all those different pieces of permission going through the company, through the port authorities, through the import-export part of the business that is situated inside the port. So I hope that this has been some use, that you can think about it and go forward by trying to claim some of this part of your portfolio as a pharmacist in a retail setting. And as I say, we still have a little bit of an upper hand there, that you need to be a qualified pharmacist in order to make this legal. So it's for those of you who live in and around a big port like Durban, Cape Town, Port Elizabeth, that is an opportunity for you. There are also your local vessels that don't go very far out of South Africa, and a lot of them that actually just sail in and around the port, and they all carry medicine boxes, and the bigger the vessel, obviously the bigger the pharmacy that they keep, and as I said, up to hospital status, where you're supplying non-medical items, non-medicine items like gauzes, bandages, plasters, splints, all those types of gadgets that they require, and necessities that they would need when they go out to sea. If you've got any questions, I'll gladly answer those on the first Friday that I post this to you, and I hope that it's been some use. May God bless you. Thank you. Bye.